advocate, social entrepreneur, and she's involved in creating equity in interfaith and civic engagement spaces. She's involved with the Chicagoland Shura Council, and along with that, she also has a double major in both finance and business administration from DePaul. And specifically, she has done a lot through Iman, which is Inner City Muslim Action Network. And Insh'Allah, you can begin, sister.
Assalamu alaikum. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Allah, you are, glory be to God, all praise is due to you. I bear witness that there is nothing worthy of worship but you, God, and that I seek refuge, I seek forgiveness from you, and to you I return in submission. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. I give open testimony that there is no God worthy of worship but God, Allah, and that Muhammad ibn Abdullah is the son of Abdullah, is the servant, Allah's servant and final messenger. It's always important to have our du'as when we do them in Arabic, that we also do them in translation so that everyone can benefit. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I mean, I think I'm pleased to be here to share with you all today. The conversation is about building a socially just community. And so it's interesting because I just recently had a conversation with Imam Zaydchek, and we were having this conversation about the concept of using the term social justice. And I think at the end of the day, what it all boils down to is that for the Muslim, justice is a cornerstone of our faith, of our deen, of our way of life, right? It's just a part of it. It's, there's so many narrations that talk about justice. So whether or not you use the terminology of social justice or whatever the case is, the concept of adl, justice, is very consummate with our way of life. So in answering this question about how do we build a socially just community, it really starts with an understanding that it's a moral imperative as a Muslim, right? It's a part of our duties that fall upon us. To be just to ourselves, our families, to ourselves, like ourselves, our nafs, like our own souls, right? Our families, our neighbors, and others. And to not turn a blind eye to the opposite of justice, which is, in this context, we could use the term oppression, right? And we are taught that whoever of you sees an evil, let him change it with his hands. And if he's not able to do so, then change it with his tongue. And if he's not able to do so, then hate it with his heart. But that is the weakest of faith. So the strongest of faith is going to be with our hands. And the second is with our tongues. So it's really this concept, this way of life that we practice of al-Islam, it's a combination of both faith and action. It's not enough to just, they're together. So we pray, and that's an act of worship. And we also put our hands where our mouths are, right? We back it up with our actions and our behaviors. So we hate or we dislike or we want to change something with our heart, our tongue, with our hand. And so what we really have to do is we have to hold ourselves into account, and we have to hold each other into account. And how do you do that, right? So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, he said, help your brother, and this can go brother or sister, help your fellow Muslim, but help your brother, whether he is an oppressor or if he is oppressed. And they asked, well, O Messenger of Allah, how do we help them we understand if they're being oppressed, but if they're the oppressor, how would we help them? And he says, by stopping them, by preventing him from oppressing others, right? And so I think what a lot of this conversation is, it seems like from like, and I got a little bit of insight from Sufyan, is like, what is the gauge between hate, like between, you know, changing something or disliking it with our hearts versus our tongues and our hands, and what's the measure of that? And I can't give you that specific answer. What I can hopefully offer are a few tools so that you can better decipher for yourself, right? Because in the end of the day, all of us are going to be held account to what we did, what we believed, and what our works were. So Inshallah, by God's grace, I pray that this talk that we have, or this discussion that we have here today, is one of benefit, productivity, and fruitfulness. Inshallah, I mean. So, and just trying to get some insight, because I'd rather, instead of just talking, I like to make sure that what I'm sharing is relevant to what people are utilizing or need to utilize. So one point that Sufyan had asked was about, or was thought was an issue of discussion, was about how do we involve minorities in our communities so as not to ostracize them? And I would say, one of the hadith is la yu'min ahadukum hatta yuhibbu li akhihi ma yuhibbu li nafsihi, and I use it all the time because it's like a cornerstone of everything. You do not truly believe until you love for your brother that which you love for yourself. So really, and then we know the golden rule is loving thy neighbor as thyself. No, the Bible says love thy neighbor as thyself. The golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And now they even have a twist of it, meaning do unto others, like what they would want you to have done unto them, and so forth and so on. But it's really just about what is it that you want, and just extending that to the people around you. Like how would you want to be treated? And then making sure that you start micro, macro, right? So, I mean, as Muslim Student Association members and leaders, I mean, you can really just start within your MSA and work out, really. The reality is, and MSAs vary across the board, depending upon where you are geographically. They differ in terms of how they're made up. But a lot of times they can lean towards being pretty homogeneous or homogenous, whatever way you pronounce it. In some areas it can be like heavily Arab, in some areas it could be heavily South Asian, and in some areas, if you're like in maybe certain southern areas near predominantly Black or HBCU colleges, it could be predominantly African American. They tend to kind of lean, even from my days at MSA, like they tend to lean pretty to be homogenous. Everyone is the same, right? So how are we looking to make sure that that we are, that we are who we say we are? So if we're Muslim Student Association, how much of the universality of the representation of Muslims is represented in our student association? If you can get that right, listen, you guys, you'll be ready for the world, because our predecessors haven't got that right yet. Still ain't got it right yet, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? And one of the questions that Sufyan was asking was like, what are some of the issues I face in regards to social justice? And some of the things are like internal, in-house, just with Muslims. People saying this is a Muslim organization or represents Muslims, but it's only a few people who is only representative of just a fraction of what the Muslim Ummah looks like, right? Or when there's pressing issues in the world that are going on, and people are sharing what they're like. They want insight from Muslims or what have you, and the people that are that they call on are just maybe one or two groups, and it's not representative, and no one speaks up. So some of it is just when you know better, you do better, and you speak up in the areas where you know things are underrepresented. So like I said, starting with just the micro level of just within your own MSA, are you looking at like who is the majority of the participants? Who is the majority of the membership? And are you caring for whoever the group is and minority? Because that's interesting, that term minority. it really depends on what your group is. If you're saying Muslims, who's the majority and minority, that could look different as you process. If you're saying like in America, who's the majority and who's in the minority, So it's interesting how it shifts depending upon the group. But wherever you are, it is the responsibility of the strong to look over the weak, and it's the responsibility of the larger, the mass, to look over the smaller. So looking within your own group. So are we looking at are there students who are disabled? Do they have what they need? Are they getting their needs met with us? Are we using English translation for non-Arabic and non-Urdu speakers? Are we accessible for convert Muslims and people who are returning to the practice of Islam? Is there a space for, are we inclusive to have, anyone who identifies, who says, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, that and stands and bears witness as a Muslim, versus, irrespective of what their sect is, their religious sect, right? But if they say that there's no God but God and that Muhammad is the messenger of God, then that identifies them as a Muslim, and we are not to say different. So are we making sure that everyone has a space and everyone's voice is heard? If the students and the leaders, because that was another question, like what can we do as younger generations, or what, if the generation, I'm from the millennial generation, or the older side of the millennial generation, but the Generation Zers, like if you guys can get it, like each generation gets a little bit more than the other, but if you guys can get it, you'll be ahead of the game. You'll really set it off for everything to come. And it's almost on you because of so much work that's gone on before you, but making sure that really, as they use the term, a Muhammadan community, a community that embodies, right, the ideals that Prophet Muhammad, praise and peace be upon him, taught us and identified. So I think we can just start right there. And if you could get that, you'll use this beyond MSA, you'll use this beyond college, you'll use this, because again, that's where, and this is all love and respect for the wombs that bore us, for our parents and our grandparents. And but each generation is supposed to be an improvement on the work that was prior, the work that was done prior. So this is an area that folks weren't strong in. This was an area that folks were not strong in. And there has been great work that's been done, but there's great strides that are still yet to be made. And so the call is really on your generation, your age group. Another question or topic was about the broader Muslim community and what we can do as a younger generation. And so, I mean, first of all, this age group is massive and highly influential. So there's so much positivity that you can affect in the world. There's so much positivity that there's so much change. You can definitely be an agent of change. And I think that was evident if you look at this election, irrespective of what your political beliefs are. But if you look at this whole election process and you look at, how the K-pop community and the TikTokers were literally able to, like, people may not take K-pop seriously, they may not take K-pop lovers seriously, but I know who did, people who attended some of these rallies and they thought there was going to be seats, they thought they were going to have this massive showing, and it was really K-pop young people who were just, who were really kind of owning that situation. And so I say this to say, this is just an example of what mobilized groups of people can do. And with the younger generation, you have exuberance, you have energy. People, be careful, protect your energy, make sure that nobody's really trying to like take a straw and just suck it out of you, because that happens. But you have exuberance, energy, and you don't have the weight of so many, I won't say, you don't have all of the baggage yet that accumulates over time. So I would say whatever idealism, but I would say counter idealism with tutelage, seek advice and counsel from elders, from wise elders, and just have a balance. So what I would say is, first is to find what you believe in. Pick an issue that you can affect or change of those things. So if you say, I'm Muslim and I believe in justice, and this is something, justice is important to me. Okay, so within the realm of justice and the areas and the impediments to justice in the society in which I live in, here is an area that I think I'm most passionate about and I want to give a contribution. Okay, and then here's the thing, do your research. Do your research. Research, like if you're curious or you want to contribute, don't just jump in. That's another thing that, you know, some of our predecessors, you know, have done, is just jumped in, sometimes just jumping into issues and not understanding the dynamics, not understanding the history, not understanding the context. Even like this, the issue with the assault on Black lives and the fight for the sovereignty of Black bodies and Black lives to exist without assault, battery, or murder. Even with this, you know, people want to get involved, and it's like, you know, get understanding about a little bit about the history and the context of why things are the way they are, and then you're better to inform yourself and others, right? So and then also use best practices. That's another thing. And one of my friends, Yesha, who's an organizer, she said, the Muslims are strong on vision and low in implementation, and implementation is 90% of success. And that's true. Like folks are like, you know, oh, we want to build this masjid, we want to build this. You're building this masjid, but are you looking at the community around that masjid? Have you found out, is there a pre-existing Muslim community that may not have the money that you have to just build a masjid? Are you trampling maybe on someone else's work? You know, doing your research and understanding the context of the issues. You know, just finding out. You can consult advisors, and you know, what is it? Facebook has this grant, this $10 million grant for social justice and racial justice, a fund. You know, and what they did was they're like a lot of the people who are leading it, you know, some of the workers on that side, they're white American, and they're like, we want to consult the experts. So we reached out to civil rights leaders and racial justice experts and things like that. So do research, because sometimes in our youthful exuberance, we don't do our whole homework. Okay, so then when you know what your issue is, you've assessed what it is that you believe in, what you feel like your responsibility as a Muslim is within the context of that issue, and done the research on, like, you know, what's the background of that, so I'm not just going into it cold, and understanding. Then you want to organize yourselves and then mobilize. Organize and then mobilize, okay? So I think that's one way, and I hope that's helpful. Another point that Sufyan brought up was, what issues do I face in the fight for social justice? Well, I mean, let's see. I'm Muslim, I am a woman, I am African-American, I'm the daughter of an African-American convert Muslim woman, and I'm and an immigrant Nigerian American father. I'm like a quadruple minority up in here, okay? So let's just we could lead with that. You know, you can just let your imagination go wild in terms of like just the everyday struggle, right? But I'm just saying, in terms of the fight for social justice, I was telling Saeed maybe like some of it is just, or maybe just in the beginning, like some of this is just internal. This is just like where you're starting just with yourself, like just in our own communities. So just starting within the Muslim community outward, you know, there's the fight for racial equity just within the Muslim community. You know what I'm saying? The rewriting of the narrative of Islam in America that speaks to the stereotypical orientalized representative of what a Muslim is, right? Which also feeds into the stereotype that Muslims are terrorists, because there's this otherization Muslim, of what a Muslim is, this otherization. It can't be something that's homegrown American. It's got to be other. And so if it's other, it's not American. You know, so that plays into that. But when we have our own communities that don't look at the history of Islam in America and all of the different communities that make up Muslims in America, then that is already kind of like a point of contention. Then the other stuff is basic equity stuff like gender equity. You know, you have Muslims who throw out words like radical feminist agenda. And the reality is that within Islam, Islam is like that our religion teaches that there's equity between male and female, right? And in fact, Islam came and gave women their rights back from a society that tried to steal them all, right? And so, and then when we don't make that relevant, when we don't promote this, and I mean actively promote it, then it feeds into this stereotype that Muslim women are oppressed and Muslim women are treated this way and that way. And it's just like, we know that that's not what Islam is about. You know, I'm a fully liberated Muslim woman because the Quran liberated Muslim women. The Quran liberates all women, right? And it's not, and I am not in opposition to any man. I'm not. We work together with each other in conjunction in this life. And so our communities need to represent, and the actions of our communities and the spaces that we create need to represent that. And then, so that's micro, macro. It's, I mean, like in this COVID moment, you know, we're on the ground, people are fighting for access to healthcare for the most impacted, and the most impacted communities right now by COVID is the Black Muslim community, and like the Black community, the African American community at large across the country, inner city communities, like Latino communities, Latinx communities. In Chicago, we have a large Mexican community. Black and brown communities are disproportionately affected by COVID and disproportionately have disproportionate disparities in access to quality healthcare, socioeconomic resources, and the like. You know, so I mean, you pick your fight. You know, we all have our contribution, and we strike where we can. And then another point was, what issues do I see in the current generation when advocating against injustice? I mean, it's interesting. We're just in such an interesting time. We're just in such an interesting time because similar to what happened after September 11th, the Muslim community really had to humble up, right? Whereas we talk about tolerance, but there were so many communities that we weren't tolerant of. And then when September 11th came, we had to reach out. We had to, just like with the elections, I think, like there, you know, one thing that that happened after the 2016 elections is that groups that usually would not work together, or typically thought that they were self-sufficient, they were forced to work together. They were forced to work together to mobilize to get better quality and access to everything, you know, for citizens, for their constituents, their communities. So I think that one of the issues at large has been balanced leadership. I would say. I think for so long, leadership within a Muslim community was really, I won't say leadership, I don't know what terminology, maybe leadership. There were a lot of imbalances. There were a lot of imbalances where things like where it was impressed upon people, prayer and worship, which is excellent, prayer and worship, but not so much the action part, not so much, there wasn't so much that was contributed to that the needs of the full holistic needs of the individual Muslim citizen wasn't necessarily being spoken to. And so what you had is people creating, you know, additional spaces, third spaces, people referring themselves as unmosque, because they were having this duality of a Muslim in this space, and this only addresses the religious parts of my life. But then I have all these other aspects, and I can't get that from the masjid. So I assume I can't get that from the Muslim community. So then I have to go everywhere else to get it. And that's a loss. That's a loss, because as Muslims, we're whole people. We're whole humans, right? This is a whole human experience. And so, but also, maybe you can't get your needs met all in one place. And then we have to be able to establish organizations, Muslim student associations, institutions that speak to the various needs of the Muslim, and in this particular case, the Muslim living in America. And so I think that we need balanced leadership that doesn't force this this dichotomy where we're like, you know, you're one way here and you're one way there, and just kind of like just your full self in all spaces, right? You may turn a little bit down or turn a little bit up. You may speak a little louder in an outdoor event and a little quieter in an indoor event, if you know what I mean, but it's your full presence and your full self. And I think that I think a danger for my and your, for the millennial and Generation Zers, is that sometimes I think in this dichotomy of us trying to work with different groups and work with, and almost as an answer to you know, and trying to work and trying to not limit yourself to just the Muslim spaces. There's been so much, I guess, there's been so much of an integration into the secular space that I think sometimes we're losing sight of ourselves, identity as Muslims. And there's still very succinct things that we do as Muslims and very succinct things that we don't do as Muslims. And we still have to have an identity. You can work with different groups and in partnerships and in coalitions, but you still maintain your identity and your standard as a Muslim. Malcolm X or Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz said, "A man who stands for nothing will fall for anything." And you know, I'll tweet that and say, like, if you stand for everything, you can't possibly stand for much, right? It's not that much standing in the world. So you have to, you know, sort out your identity, stand true to that, partner with like minds in good works, right? And then partner with like minds in good works, you know, but not lose sight of who you are and what your identity is, what your holy book says. And as the Quran does say, like, you know, bow down with those who bow down their head and worship, meaning keep you a good, like, ashab, like keep your good sahaba, a group of companions who are going to invite you to, you know, keep you balanced when you're doing this work. Because it can get you caught up if you're not paying attention. My teacher, Imam Warthaddin Muhammad, rahimahullah alayh, mercy, Allah's mercy upon him, said that the Muslim doesn't follow the trends, we set the standard, you know, and so we just got to make sure that I think we used to set the standard, but then, you know, it was so rigid that people still didn't get everything that they needed, and now it seems like, you know, we're in jeopardy of just always following the trends, and I think it's just a balance between that. This last point that you know, Sufyan, you know, we're discussing was this, you know, how to differentiate between what is right and what is wrong and still fighting for justice. How do we ensure that we don't fall into the extreme categories? And then just how do we, you know, and this concept of, you know, how do we work with other groups? Let me just make sure I got this one. I think it was, how do we work? Let me make sure, hold on 1 second. Make sure I got this question that Sufyan gave me. I think that question was, if Islam is very strict, has stance on a topic or a specific type of group, how do we still show justice and not contradict Islamic teachings? And you know, again, it's no one can give you the answer for what it is that you need to do for your life and with yourself. No one person can give you that answer. At the end of the day, it's about your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your relationship with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how you keep accountable to that. So no one person can give you that. What I will say though is, you know, one of my friends was saying, we were talking about like how some groups are like, some masjids and imams or things are like, you know, should we, if there's, if people are fighting for these rights or those rights, or, you know, should we involve ourselves, or should we support them? And, you know, it was interesting. She said, why do you have to ask if fighting for humanity is halal? I thought that was a strong statement. Why do you have to ask if fighting for humanity is halal? And I think you have to use that as a standard, and then you can navigate from there. So the thing is, if you saw someone beating someone on the street, you know, would that be right or would that be wrong? Would you be accountable for turning a blind eye or not calling for help or trying to aid insofar as you can? You know what I'm saying? I think that is a pivotal starting point. And so it was interesting. I was talking to an imam of a masjid, and there was a group that wanted support at one of their rallies, and I think it was I can't remember. I know it was the Arab community, an Arab suburban community, and they wanted one of the Black masjids to kind of come out and support. And the imam at this particular masjid, he seemed really, it was sincere, but he was like, you know, that's our Muslim brother and we'll help them. But I have to say, when we needed their help, they didn't come. We reached out to them multiple times and they didn't come, you know, and or they knew what was going on, they knew what we were facing, and they didn't aid. And so you really just kind of have to reflect that, what would you need, or how would you want someone to come to your aid if you were in the similar situation? Because without a doubt and of a surety, right, there may come a time when in fact you are also dealing with the same issue and you need that support, you know? And so it's really putting yourself in the shoe of others, loving for your brother that which you love for yourself, when it comes to certain matters. And then when it comes to groups that you are concerned about, if it conflicts, I think that we look at the Constitution of Medina. It is one of the, and in fact, Imam Mendes was just talking about that. It is one of the most pivotal constitutions, bringing Muslims, Christians, Jews together, you know, and trying to establish a state where people coexisted. And we know that there are states where people coexist, and that model states that have modeled themselves after this constitution. We know that there are countries that are not just America, that have Muslim, Christians, and Jews living, and everyone fully exercising their rights according to their doctrine, you know? So we can't be of the mindset that just ignoring different groups and others and act like they don't exist. We're all here. Allah has allotted for all of us to be here. So we're all here, and we have to find ways to, I want to say, like, to coexist and with the groups of like mind to work together. And then if there are groups that have beliefs that are other than what we agree upon as Muslims, you may find yourself in a position based on your responsibility at school, based upon your responsibility at work, to still be just, right? To still be just. And also because that's a moral imperative as a Muslim is to be just, right? So you may still find that a factor or a need or a concern. And so in which case you can work with others, you can partner with others and as needed, and then you can, as the work requires you to do, and then part on that same, on that same path. And I'll liken this to, all of us, like you can think of any war movie or battle. I'm thinking Game of Thrones, but let's think, like, I don't know, let's just assume everybody's seen Black Panther, right? And you, there's this part where the Wakandans are having the civil war, and there's this group, this tribe that's Wakandan, but they've been kind of ostracized. They're disparate from the rest of the group. And they asked, the hero asked for support from this ostracized group, and they're like, y'all ostracized us. Y'all don't really include us in anything. Now you want our help? We're not going to help you. And so at some point, though, they're on the battlefield. They're dying. They're killing each other, and this group comes in. It's like when you're in that time of war and you're trying to save humanity, you may find yourself partnering with groups that you might not ordinarily partner with. I'm not suggesting that you lose any sight of your Islam. I'm not saying, and there's certain groups that we don't need to partner with, because they're just, maybe they're the antithesis of everything that we say that we are as Muslims. You have to really continue to study your religion and cultivate your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your relationship with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and find out how he navigated working with people of different faiths or other groups that were other than the early group of believers, and use those as an example, So I hope this is helpful. I'm going to go ahead and pause right here. So if there are any questions or comments, then we can have time for that.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or even just type it in the chat, inshallah. If not, I did have one thing. So
Sure.
I live, a typical suburban guy. I'm not like really in the Chicago community.
Okay.
And I was wondering, I've heard a lot about Iman itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering more if you could elaborate more about what they do and what specific work is done through it. Because I've always been interested in getting involved, but never really had the chance. There was always the factor of it's kind of far, but yeah, if you could elaborate on that.
Sure. Okay, cool. So just for the record, I'm not officially representing Iman in this capacity, but what I can say is just a community member is that so Iman is a 501c3 nonprofit that it addresses the issues often plaguing inner city communities, and it does that by operating a federally qualified health center, organizing an advocacy work, cultivating the arts and culture in urban communities, operating a reentry program for returning citizens previously incarcerated. And I think that, and there's even some broader work that it's doing with in terms of like community development work, in terms of like establishing fresh marketplaces and access to produce in neighborhoods that are often blighted and historically have limited access to fresh fruits and produce, which is essential for healthy living and to have a fully, healthy lifestyle. And so I think, so I guess that's kind of Iman, I guess, in a quick nutshell, but Iman does organizing and advocacy. I say they because I'm trying to separate myself because I'm not officially representing it in this capacity. But Iman does organizing and advocacy work around, we've done a lot during this COVID moment. Right now, just looking at like just the outreach that's gone on, creating, we've been working with the Greater Chicago Food Depository to give food, to distribute food. At one point, I think the last number was like maybe 500 families per week of food to people who need access to food during this COVID moment, people who've lost their jobs. There's a lot of work done around the food ecosystem, starting community gardens to help promote access to fresh foods, advocacy work around legislation that promotes racial and social equity. Let's see. I mentioned the health center, but the health center is a big piece because a lot of times in blighted, underserved communities, under invested in communities, they tend to have the least quality of everything, the least quality stores, the least quality access to healthcare. Iman runs a federally qualified health center that operates 6 days of the week. And currently the 60629 zip code has the highest rates of COVID in the whole city of Chicago. And right now, Iman's also been operating a COVID testing site. So, it's located in the highest, the neighborhood with the highest rates, and is operating a testing site to help test people, which is one of the biggest ways to help fight COVID. So I could go on and on, but yeah, it's a lot of good work that's being done. I highly encourage anyone or everyone to check out the website, learn more. We're at the end of 2020. I know there are some internship opportunities that may become available in 2021. But yeah.
Jazakallah khair. Yeah, that covers a lot, mashallah. It's important work for the community.
Yeah.
Hopefully we could partner with them, with Iman, after the COVID situation.
That may be something, yeah.
Yeah, UIC is like right in, super close to downtown, essentially in downtown.
Yeah, Inshallah. Yeah. I think UIC is it's not too far from Iman. Iman is on the southwest side and like the Oak Lawn. I said Oak Lawn, Chicago Lawn. Sorry, I live near Oak Lawn. It's in the Chicago Lawn neighborhood, and it's not very far from UIC at all. It's like right off the expressway because it's still kind of on the west side.
Right.
Yeah, I think we have, what is it? I don't want to call people out, but we got Fatima, we got Muzaffar, Hamid, Laiba, Faiza, Alia. So, I mean, if you have a question or a comment or anything that you heard today that you just want to weigh in on, I definitely, I'll take some constructive criticism or some feedback or what have you.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So,
Faiza,
Faiza. Oftentimes I feel like, especially in the Islamic community, on like social media especially, people grow kind of a sense of righteousness based off how religious they deem themselves. And then they make comments to others, judging others on how they live. And then they back themselves up with Allah's words. But then in turn, you know, that's the opposite of what we should be doing, and we should be helping like each other grow. Mm-hmm. So how would you respond to someone if you saw that occur, if that makes sense?
Oh, I mean, I can give you a scenario. I actually just shared it with some folks on Sunday. I was saying that I was interviewed one time, and the sister, she was like, what did she say? She said, she's like, you know, and I was called as an alumnus of a school that I went to, and I was there speaking. And so she interviewed me afterwards, and she was like, you know, your outfit, you know, how do you, it was something to the effect of, how do you feel to, you know, that since you're not necessarily dressed as a Muslim, you know, like, you know, what inspired you to kind of wear that, or something to the effect that I wasn't dressed as a Muslim. And I was like, whoa, like, really? So I said, okay, well, I guess I would say I'm dressed as a Muslim because I'm a Muslim, and this is what I'm dressed as. So I think we'll start there. Just like when people say, oh, your name is Ndidi Okakpu, which is Nigerian on my dad's side. And they're like, what's your Muslim name? I'm like, Ndidi Okakpu, because I'm a Muslim and my name is Ndidi Okakpu. So there you have it. And so I think that there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of Muslims that we have to be mindful of being dogmatic. The Quran says, La ikraha fi din, right? Let there be no compulsion in religion. If you want to use the term religion, in this way of life, let there be no compulsion, right? Yeah. Like, what is it? Righteousness stands out, truth stands out clear from falsehood. So you don't have to badger somebody on it, because what's right, what is truth, what is haqq is clear. And what is not is, you know, we have to be mindful of how we impose ourselves as the authorities of everything and everyone, because we're not, and Allah's authority, right? Yeah. There's all sorts of narration about, like, you know, there'll be a person who's like, you know, in the day of judgment, like, no, in the hellfire, there'll be a person whose guts will spill out. No, I'm paraphrasing. All these things are going to happen to them. And everyone's like, well, you used to tell us that we need to do this. And he said, yeah, but we never did it ourselves. I didn't do it myself. But you used to command us to speak that we need to do this and we need to do that. But they weren't doing it themselves. And so what I'm saying is it's a fine line of moderation between not going around proselytizing everyone as if we are the authority, and as opposed to minding our own deen and making sure that we're right, that we're right and we're moving in the right way. So there's a fine line between balancing that and just kind of like letting everything go and anything go, right? There are some things that are clear, but that are clear. So if someone was just having like some type of graphic, like illicit something going on, like that's clear, right? You know, but even if you saw something that you felt was incorrect, that you wanted to point out, you should do it with humility. You should check your intentions, do it with humility, and deliver it in the way in which you would want somebody to deliver it to you. There's all sorts of Black Muslims, convert Muslims who've complained about, and convert Muslims. I'm not saying Black and convert Muslims are synonymous, but there's all sorts of who've complained about, maybe they were praying in the masjid with their arms to their side, right? And someone was saying, oh, that's wrong. We're stopping them in the middle of prayer. Like, who does that, right? But that's a very auntie-uncle thing that has been done to many people, that our aunties and uncles have done to people. And so that's not how you do it. You know, the Prophet one time taught a man how to make wudu by just making it in a clean and proper way. Just did it, and the man observed him. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, so I hope that's helpful. I think in terms of just, so I'm saying we have to be mindful. We are, when we look at the shama'il, the examples, the characteristics rather of the Prophet, you know, he was dignified, he was kind in how he communicated, he was thoughtful, he was considerate, and his teaching of others. So even if you think someone is doing something that's objectively wrong, you have to be gentle in your approach, and thoughtful, and give them the approach that you would want them to give you. And I hope that's helpful.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think humility is a huge part, and kind of self-evaluation and looking at the situation and how you would want to be treated. And
absolutely. And if somebody is dogmatically throwing something at you, you can just let them know, like, brother and or sister, the way that you're delivering this to me is not really, this doesn't seem like this is that of how a Muslim is supposed to treat their brother and sister. So push back. And when you push back, but push back with sincerity, and when you push back in that way, perhaps you'll give them something to think about. They'll help equip them so that they won't do that to the next person. Because maybe Faiza is strong and is like, no, you're not, that's not how you do it. But maybe someone else is new, right? And they're like, their whole world is shattered because they were dogmatically told that this was,
Yeah.
I feel like Saeed wants to say something. He keeps doing this and this.
No. I think those were very good and important points. I resonate with that a lot. I mean, social media in general is, you cannot take it too seriously.
Yeah. We're definitely in this cancel culture. We've got to be mindful of that too, because, you cancel out, you can block out good things. We got to be careful with trolling, right? Think about it. Everything that you type, every word that you speak will weigh one side or the other side. So just people be like Twitter banging and keyboard banging on people, as if every word of trash talking that we're making is not, that we're not going to be accountable for that. So it's really, we have to, tread lightly upon the earth. All right, I think we're at our last couple of minutes. So Muzaffar, Alia, Laiba, Fatimata. I'll start calling people out. If you're good, then you're good. Hopefully this was helpful. And you guys, if you have any other questions, if you want to know more about Iman, since Saeed mentioned it, Inner City Muslim Action Network, the website is imancentral.org. Oh, that was William from Alhamdulillah. Okay. Oh, wow. There's all these little comments in the chat I didn't see. Sorry. Barakallahu feek. Okay. If you have any more questions, or if you want to learn more about that particular organization, Inner City Muslim, it's Iman Central, IMAN Central.org. If you want to learn more about some of the work that I've done, it's Okakpu.com, NOKAKPU.com, or on socials, I'm at Ndidi Writes, NDIDI WRITES, NDIDI WRITES. You don't have to follow me, but if you just want to message me, if you just have questions or whatever, I'll be happy to, or follow up, or you want me to connect you with more resources about social justice, racial justice, some books to maybe help you understand maybe the Black community, Black Muslim community, book or different things like that, you can hit me up and I'll be sure to share those resources with you, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. I think this has been really informative and insightful. Inshallah, we can all benefit and take our community to the next level, inshallah. Do what we can on our part.
Ameen.
Ameen, ya Rabbal Alameen. I think that concludes the night. Inshallah, Jazakallah khair for everybody for coming and listening in. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.